What does it take for a NATO country to finally say enough? Not a declaration of war, not a military ultimatum, just a drone, a cheap Iranian-designed copy, falling onto an apartment building where a 14-year-old child was sleeping. That single moment triggered the fastest and most severe response any NATO member has delivered since the war in Ukraine began. And it wasn't the first incident. It was the 28th. To understand why that number matters, you need to go back to the night it happened. Russia launched a wave of 43 drones toward southern Ukraine. The target was the port of Ismail on the Danube River, directly across from the Romanian border. Ukrainian air defenses intercepted most of them, but one drone, a Shahed copy known as the Geran 2, deviated from its course and crossed into Romanian airspace. Romanian radars were tracking it. 2 F-16 fighter jets and a military helicopter were scrambled immediately. Pilots received authorization to engage and shoot down the target. But the drone was flying at low altitude, just a few hundred meters above the ground. It remained in Romanian airspace for only 4 minutes, covering roughly 10 kilometers. The F-16s were airborne. The authorization was in place. But there was no physical window to fire without putting civilians at risk. By the time the pilots reached engagement range, the drone had already struck an apartment building in the city of Galati. 2 civilians were injured. That same night, hundreds of kilometers away in the northwest of the country, another large unmanned aerial vehicle, this one without an explosive payload, was found on the ground. Romania's defense ministry officially confirmed that both drones were Russian-made. 28 airspace violations since 2022. This was the first time an explosive-laden drone had directly hit a civilian structure. Romania's response came without hesitation and without diplomatic softening. President Nicușan convened an emergency session of the Supreme Council of National Defense. After the meeting, he stepped before the press and announced a series of decisions that went far beyond a formal protest note. The Russian consul general in Constanta was declared persona non grata. The consulate itself would be closed. That decision was not arbitrary. Constanta is Romania's largest port. It hosts the largest NATO naval base on the Black Sea. It serves as a transit hub for military and civilian supplies flowing to Ukraine. And it sits roughly an hour from Europe's largest NATO base and from the Deveselu missile defense shield. Romanian intelligence had already requested the expulsion of Russian diplomats from Bucharest the previous year, citing the collection of intelligence in strategic sectors. The Constanta consulate had long been assessed as a surveillance post, monitoring NATO naval movements, port activity, and shipments to Ukraine. Closing it was not symbolic. It was an operational blow. Russia lost its eye on one of the most strategically sensitive coastlines in Europe. The Russian ambassador in Bucharest was summoned to the foreign ministry. Additional sanctions on Russian diplomatic personnel were proposed. In a single night, Russia's intelligence and diplomatic infrastructure in Romania was effectively dismantled. Romania also pressed NATO directly. The interim prime minister formally requested the urgent deployment of equipment capable of detecting low-altitude drones, the exact category of threat that slipped through that 4-minute window. The request moved fast, faster than any comparable response from a NATO member since the war began. And there is a heavier card still on the table. Romania's foreign minister stated publicly that the Galati incident justifies invoking Article 4 of the NATO Charter, the collective consultation mechanism that brings the entire alliance to the table when any member believes its territorial integrity is under threat. No formal decision has been made yet, but the card has been named. That card has been played before, and its consequences were concrete. When Poland activated Article 4 after a large number of Russian drones entered its airspace, Alliance aircraft fired at enemy targets in Allied airspace for the first time in NATO history. Polish F-16s, Dutch F-35s, and support aircraft responded together. Multiple drones were shot down. Additional Patriot batteries were deployed to Poland. Airspace restrictions were imposed along the eastern border. Poland's prime minister told Parliament it was the closest the continent had come to open conflict since the Second World War. Romania's situation carries even stronger diplomatic weight. In Poland's case, there were no civilian casualties. One house was damaged. In Romania, a drone struck an apartment building. A child was among the injured. And this was not a single night spike. It was the 28th violation in an ongoing pattern. The alliance responded quickly. NATO's Secretary General delivered a message of full solidarity and reiterated that the alliance stands ready to defend every square centimeter of Allied territory. The U.S. ambassador to NATO called it a reckless incursion. NATO's spokesperson went further, stating that additional defensive measures were being actively considered. Not rhetoric, but a signal of operational steps. The European Commission announced the preparation of a new sanctions package, one that had not been on the agenda before the drone struck Galati. France summoned the Russian ambassador and condemned the incident as an act threatening regional security, a statement that carried additional weight given that French troops are stationed on Romanian soil. Ukrainian President Zelensky offered direct support. The Kremlin, meanwhile, declined to confirm whether the drone was even Russian, while simultaneously threatening a swift response to the consulate closure. The country that dropped a drone on a civilian building was issuing retaliation warnings. But Romania's real leverage is not diplomatic. It is military, and it has been quietly building for 3 years. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Romania was considered one of the weaker links on NATO's eastern flank. It shared a long border with Ukraine, held a Black Sea coastline within range of Russian forces, and was still flying Cold War-era fighter jets. Its Air Force was conducting patrols with MiG-21s, aircraft designed in the 1950s, used to counter threats from the 2020s. That picture has changed entirely. The MiG-21s were retired and replaced with F-16 Fighting Falcons, acquired from Portugal and Norway. The fleet has since grown substantially, and additional aircraft from the Netherlands are expected to bring the total to over 60 modern fighter jets by the end of the year. The F-16s that scrambled over Galati were part of this new force. Air defense has been restructured into a layered system. At the highest tier, Patriot PAC-3 plus batteries cover ballistic missiles and high-altitude threats, with additional batteries scheduled for delivery. Below them, Mistral launchers and short-range systems from South Korea cover medium and low altitudes. And at the lowest layer, the layer that matters most for the kind of drone that hit Galati, Romania, tested drone intercepting systems during a NATO exercise just weeks before the incident. The defense minister confirmed they would be operational within days of that test. Had the timeline been slightly different, the Galati drone would have been intercepted. Romania is also expanding its offensive and ground capabilities. Soviet-era tanks are being replaced with modern American systems. Long-range rocket artillery, capable of striking targets across the Black Sea, has been added to the inventory. And Romania is no longer just a country defended against drones. It is building the capacity to produce them. 18 Bayraktar TB2s have been delivered. Joint drone production agreements have been signed with Ukraine, and a separate production and testing arrangement has been established with the United States and the United Kingdom. 1 week before the Galati incident, the European Commission approved a defense financing package for Romania under the SAFE program, one of the largest defense grants ever awarded to a single country by the European Union. The package covers 15 separate programs: air defense modernization, Black Sea naval reinforcement, mechanized warfare upgrades, helicopter fleet renewal, and defense industry development. 7 days after that approval, a Russian drone fell on a Romanian apartment building. The timing made the reasoning self-evident. The geography explains everything. Romania's border with Ukraine runs along the Danube River, the same river across which Russia targets the port of Ismail. Every drone attack wave passes directly along Romania's frontier. Its Black Sea coastline sits opposite Russia's Black Sea Fleet. On its territory, NATO's ballistic missile defense shield operates at Deveselu, a system Russia has demanded be removed for years. Nearby, NATO's largest base in Europe is under active expansion, with thousands of Allied troops permanently stationed there and a U.S. forward logistics depot being established. Any strike on that base would directly involve American personnel. Romania is also the southern gateway for weapons flowing to Ukraine. A NATO coordination hub opened there to work in parallel with the hub in Poland, creating a southern supply route. Hundreds of thousands of tons of military aid have moved through NATO logistics structures, with Romanian ports and the Danube corridor handling a substantial share of that traffic. The drone that fell on Galati did not land in an ordinary place. It landed in the soil of a country that hosts NATO's missile shield, borders Europe's largest military base, and controls the southern weapons corridor to Ukraine. The drone itself was cheap. The location was not. Russia has a technical argument. A navigation error in a large drone swarm is plausible. GPS drift happens. Romanian Brigadier General Maxim himself acknowledged this was not a deliberate attack on Romania. But an accident that repeats 28 times stops being an accident in any meaningful sense. As one resident of Galati put it plainly, this has happened 28 times. Either Russia is doing it intentionally, or it is highly incompetent at waging war. Neither answer is reassuring. Just 10 days before the Galati strike, Romania passed a law explicitly authorizing the shoot-down of unauthorized drones entering its airspace. The law was written for exactly this scenario. In the first real test, the 4-minute window was too narrow. When the layered defense system is complete, that window will close permanently. Every drone violation is accelerating Romania's armament and narrowing the Kremlin's room to maneuver. Russia dropped a drone on an apartment building and lost a consulate, an intelligence asset, and another piece of its diplomatic credibility. The next drone will be shot down. If you want to keep following how this situation develops, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It helps us continue covering stories that matter.